Hello everyone. We are Market Recap and Product Coalition Services presenting to you a topic on hydrogen economy and its linkage with the power sector. Well, the concept of hydrogen economy is not new, but it started gaining more attention these days. Based on the reports published by various market research companies, white papers, and news articles, we provide sensible summary on the hydrogen economy and its linkage with the power sector. This presentation has 60 slides and it should take around an hour to finish the presentation. So let's proceed with the main contents. Below topics are summarized based on multiple sources. We will start with defining hydrogen economy. Then we focus on the source for producing hydrogen, hydrogen enablers. It is also interesting to understand how hydrogen is compared with natural gas and what challenges it imposes on the entire value chain. After this basic knowledge, it will be easier to grasp why there exists linkage between hydrogen and surplus power produced by renewable energy sources. We thereafter shift our focus to understand how hydrogen will impact the economy. We will review few parameters as forecasted by IEEJ on Japan's economy for the year 2050 with and without hydrogen introduction. The transition from fossil fuel to low emission fuel will also mean new business model to enable this transition, and we will review some of those details in this section. And then in last two section is all about short-term outlook for next 10 years, and then we will conclude with one page high-level summary. The first section is about hydrogen economy. Let's review definition of hydrogen economy. The term economy is defined as the state of a country or region in terms of production and consumption of goods and services and the supply of money. When the economy is referred with respect to hydrogen, it means use of hydrogen as a low carbon fuel, particularly for heat, but also for hydrogen vehicles, seasonal energy storage, and long distance transport of energy. This, in a sense, means significant usage of hydrogen in our daily life, and then it becomes essential parameters to drive country economy. The prospect for hydrogen economy is also due to global warming, which calls for transition from fossil fuel to zero emission alternatives like hydrogen. Pure hydrogen-based technologies offer negligible emission. The term hydrogen economy was coined by John Bockris during a talk he gave in 1970 at General Motors Technical Center. The concept was proposed earlier by genetist J.B.S. Haldane. University of Michigan has proposed hydrogen economy to nullify negative impact of hydrocarbon fuel as the fossil fuel releases carbon to the atmosphere, which results into greenhouse gases. In 1900, conventional cars were developed, but there was no infrastructure for gasoline. Yet the conventional car became success due to improving transport efficiency, which resulted in economic growth, and the infrastructure were then developed to meet such demand. Today we are in a situation where economy is dependent on the fossil fuel, which is finite, and the life is unimaginable without fossil fuel. However, all this is resulting into global warming for the planet Earth. Hydrogen is abundant on planet Earth and it can be produced from multiple sources. It's an energy carrier and not energy source and can be used for powering of vehicles as well as industries and residents. So, what's stopping us to use hydrogen if it is most abundantly available resource in the universe? The challenge is to produce economically and in environment friendly manner. The next few slides will address some of these questions: how hydrogen is produced, how it is transported, and how it will impact country economy and what we see in next 10 years. Hydrogen is abundantly available in universe. In this section, we will review most common way of deriving hydrogen from other sources. The source for hydrogen productions are as listed in this slide. The first and the most common way to generate hydrogen is steam methane reformation. Most of the hydrogen produced today are through steam reformation methodology. Hydrogen produced through this way is called as gray hydrogen. The next category is called as brown hydrogen. In this methodology, hydrogen is produced through gasification of coal or lignite. This is relatively cheap way to produce hydrogen, but it emits large amount of CO2. Blue hydrogen. In this methodology, hydrogen is produced through natural gas and coal is also included. This method results into emission while generating hydrogen, which needs to be taken care through carbon capture technology. Green hydrogen is the cleanest form of hydrogen. It is produced from the electrolysis of water. The entire process is powered through renewable power sources like solar or wind, which has zero carbon. It is clean and the most ideal way, but also the most expensive way of producing hydrogen. As seen in the earlier slide, hydrogen can be produced from fossil fuel and biomass or from water and various other sources. This slide further provides additional information on hydrogen sources. Natural gas is the most common source of hydrogen production, and steam methane reformer are generally employed to produce methane for industries and refineries. As of today, 75%, which is around 70 million ton of hydrogen, are produced using 205 billion cubic meter of natural gas, which is 6% of global natural gas use. Coal comes next due to abundant availability in China. Hydrogen produced through coal gasification accounts for an estimated 23% of global hydrogen produced and uses 107 metric ton of coal, which is 2% of global usage. Biomass and electricity accounts for the remainder of hydrogen production. The process of making hydrogen through steam reforming technology is mentioned in this slide. Steam methane reforming, abbreviated as SMR, is the most common technology to produce hydrogen from natural gas in large scale. SMR is likely to remain dominating technology even in near future because of favorable economics and large scale of steam methane reforming processes in operations as of today. High temperature steam around 700 degrees Celsius to 1000 degrees Celsius is used to produce hydrogen from methane source such as natural gas. Methane reacts with steam under 3 to 25 bar pressure in the presence of catalyst to produce hydrogen, carbon monoxide and relatively small amount of carbon dioxide. Steam reforming is an endothermic process. That means heat must be supplied to initiate the reaction. Subsequently, in water-gas shift reaction, carbon monoxide and steam are reacted using a catalyst to produce carbon dioxide and more hydrogen. In a final step, pressure swing absorption, carbon dioxide and other impurities are removed from the gas stream, leaving essentially pure hydrogen. Steam reforming can also be used to produce hydrogen from other fuels such as ethanol, propane, and even gasoline. Using carbon capture utilization and storage, that is CCUS, with SMR plants, it is possible to reduce emission up to 90% by applying at process and energy emission stream. CO2 can be separated from high pressure synthesis gas stream, which can reduce the emission by 60%. CO2 can also be captured from diluted furnace gas, which can reduce CO2 by 90% or more. ATR is alternative technology in which required heat is produced in the reformer itself, which allows higher CO2 recovery than SMR. Hydrogen production from water and electricity is as described in this slide. Water electrolysis is an electrochemical process that splits water into hydrogen and oxygen. Less than 0.1% hydrogen is produced through water electrolysis. This methodology produces pure hydrogen, which is used for applications like electronics and polysilicon. Declining cost of electricity produced through renewable sources like wind and solar offers opportunity to produce hydrogen at lower price, as this surplus low cost power is used for electrolysis to generate hydrogen. Around 9 liters of water can produce 1 kg of hydrogen and 8 kg of oxygen, which can be used for healthcare and industrial sector. This means for producing today's hydrogen consumption of 70 million tons of hydrogen, it will need 617 million cubic meter of water, which corresponds to 1.3% of water consumption of the global energy sector as of 2019, or roughly twice the water consumption for hydrogen through SMR, which is around 345 million cubic meter. Considering huge water consumption, generally sea water is used for producing hydrogen instead of fresh water. The electrolyzer technology like alkaline, proton exchange membrane and solid oxide fuel cells are used to produce hydrogen. This slide provides details of producing hydrogen through coal gasification process. Hydrogen production from coal gasification process is well-established technology. Since decades, this has been used by the chemical and the fertilizer company for producing ammonia. Hydrogen production results in CO2 emission of about 19 ton of CO2 per ton of hydrogen, which is twice as much as natural gas. It is necessary to use carbon capture technology if hydrogen is generated through this process. Hydrogen to carbon ratio is low, around zero point 0.1 used to 1 as against 4 used to 1 from methane. This low ratio brings challenges for CCUS, as the gases also has other impurities like sulfur and nitrogen. The synthesis gas obtained from the gasification of coal could be used to fuel the combined power plant, and when used with CCUS, it can produce low carbon electricity. When water gas shift units are added, synthesis gas can be used to produce more hydrogen. The decision to produce hydrogen or electricity could be taken based on the profitability, which is based on demand. The details in relation to producing hydrogen from biomass process is as mentioned below. Thermochemical gasification is a process that works like coal gasification to convert biomass to carbon monoxide, CO2, hydrogen, and methane. Anaerobic digestion is a matured and well-established way of producing biogas, and it can process sewage, sludge, agriculture waste, food processing waste, household waste, and crops. The biogas is treated again to produce hydrogen. This process of generating hydrogen is expensive as compared to solar or wind-based electrolysis methodology. Hydrogen production from biomass with carbon capture and storage would result into negative emission, which will play a significant role in future. Having seen hydrogen categories and the various ways of producing hydrogen, let's understand what factors can help to commercialize hydrogen for the economic growth. We will call them as hydrogen enablers. This slide reviews some of the enablers of the hydrogen economy. Hydrogen safety. Hydrogen is colorless, odorless, and tasteless. This means specific sensors or odorization is needed to sense the hydrogen in our surrounding. Gas network collaborators are working to create guidelines for injecting hydrogen into natural gas pipeline. Work has already started to define safety standards for hydrogen within homes, determining hydrogen purity for residential and industrial usage, safe way of producing hydrogen, and defining safety protocol for transporting hydrogen. Another factor is carbon capturing and storage. Mass production of blue hydrogen is dependent on the use of carbon capture and storage technology. As of now, 23 large-scale facilities are operational all over the world, capturing 40 million tons of carbon per year. Deploying CCS at large scale will make blue hydrogen production attractive for natural gas producers. As of today, it is cheaper to release the carbon than to capture the carbon. Another important factor is building infrastructure suitable for hydrogen usage. Hydrogen may need to be operated at different pressure. It may have adverse impact on the equipment material. It may be needed to check the compatibility of the equipment with hydrogen gas, and all this means more research and investment in infrastructure. As per Hydrogen Council, around $280 billion investment needed till year 2030 to realize full hydrogen role in energy transition. It is estimated that around 40% of investment will be towards hydrogen production, around 30% into storage, transport and distribution, and 25% for the product development and manufacturing, and the balance towards developing entire new business model to support this transition. Many countries uses natural gas for various applications, and its infrastructure can be modified to use hydrogen. This will avoid investment towards building separate infrastructure for hydrogen. It is estimated that even blending 5% hydrogen into natural gas will significantly boost hydrogen demand and could spur further investment. Some of the high torque applications where electrical substitute may not be the solution will be ideal to shift to hydrogen. Further studies need to be done to understand adverse impact of hydrogen on the product material and component which are directly exposed to hydrogen. Investment in establishing international supply chain infrastructure started taking shape. For example, Japan is focusing on hydrogen economy and Australia has natural resources have announced collaboration for supply of blue hydrogen. The hydrogen is generated through coal gasification process and using CCS, blue hydrogen is manufactured and then transported to Japan. Right policy will attract investment. UK's net zero emission by 2050, which is part of policy released in 2019, has sparked immediate attention with hydrogen becoming indispensable part of gas operator strategies. Similar policies on mass use of CCS will drive demand for the hydrocarbon and renewable energy. Policies on 100% renewable power will drive demand for hydrogen power, and this will also enable switching between hydrogen and power. In this section, we will see how hydrogen is compared with respect to natural gas and what are the possible ways of collecting and bringing hydrogen to the market. This slide elaborates difference between hydrogen, hydrogen-based fuel, and feedstock. Hydrogen is not energy but energy carrier, which means its role is like an electricity. The crucial difference between hydrogen and electricity is hydrogen is chemical energy carrier composed of molecules and not only electrons. Chemical energy is attractive because it can be transported and stored in a stable way like coal, natural gas or biomass for example. Because of molecular structure, hydrogen can be combined with carbon and nitrogen to make hydrogen-based products which are easier to handle and are used as a feedstock to reduce emission. Hydrogen-based fuel and feedstock can be produced from any source of hydrogen, whether electricity, biomass, or fossil fuel. Ammonia is like chemical feedstock or can be used as a fuel which is made up of hydrogen and nitrogen. Let's understand the hydrogen gas properties with respect to natural gas. Hydrogen contain more energy per unit of mass as compared to natural gas or gasoline, making it attractive for transport sector. Energy per unit of mass is around 120.1 megajoule per kg, and that's LHV figure, which is 3 times of gasoline. Hydrogen is the lightest element and has low energy density per volume, which means more hydrogen should be moved to get equivalent energy from other sources. And this can be achieved using larger or faster flowing pipelines and larger storage tank. Energy density of hydrogen is one third of natural gas. Hydrogen is just 1/10 of natural gas comparing gas density and 1/6 of natural gas considering liquid density. The density of liquid hydrogen is 70.79 kg per nm cube at minus 253 degrees Celsius at 1 bar. Hydrogen can be compressed, liquefied or transformed into hydrogen-based products that has higher energy density, but this transformation consumes some of its energy. Boiling point of hydrogen is 90 degrees Celsius below LNG, which stands at minus 252.76 degrees Celsius at 1 bar. Flame velocity is 346 centimeter per second, which is 8 times of the methane. Ignition range is 4 to 77% in air by volume, which is 6 times wider than methane. Auto ignition temperature is 585 degrees Celsius and ignition energy is 0.02, which is 1/10 of methane. This slide is about hydrogen collection, transportation, distribution, and storage related. As far as possible, hydrogen production need to be close to the consumption point because if the distance increases, the transmission and distribution cost will be easily more than 3 times that of the production cost. Various options with underground facilities are available to store the hydrogen. Long distance transmission is extremely difficult due to lower energy density. Compression, liquefaction, or incorporation of hydrogen into higher molecules are the possible options being explored for long-distance transmission. Blending hydrogen into natural gas infrastructure will reduce the investment in building infrastructure as well as boost the consumption of hydrogen. For overseas transportation, hydrogen has to be liquefied or transported as ammonia or liquid organic hydrogen carriers. Pipeline is the cost-effective way of transporting of gas for high consumption. Current style of transportation through trucks carrying hydrogen as a gas or liquid will remain as the main distribution channel for the next decade. In some of the countries, it will be cheaper to import hydrogen rather than in-house production. For example, the cost of hydrogen production in Japan is likely to be $6.5 per kg in year 2030 as against import cost will be around $5.5 per kg from Australia. In this section, we will analyze various scenarios for utilizing surplus power when demand doesn't exist. Challenges with surplus power are immense. Variable energy sources like solar and wind generates power depending upon whether sun is available or wind is blowing. The energy thus produced is irrespective of demand. The energy produced at zero cost may need to be curtailed if the demand doesn't exist. There is also a chance that demand exists but variable energy sources are not in a position to generate power. Hence, the most obvious action is to store excess power produced and utilize when the demand doesn't exist. In this section, we will explore such options based on its likely returns. There are various ways to utilize surplus power. We will evaluate last three options mentioned in this slide considering levelized cost of energy. The options are no conversion, which also means waste the energy produced when the demand doesn't exist. Second is convert surplus power to heat. Third is store the power. Fourth is convert surplus power to hydrogen. Let's first explore the option storage of electricity. To understand this concept, we need to be aware of energetic cost. Energetic cost means total amount of fuel and electricity required to build and operate storage technology. Based on the research done at Stanford University, solar power can be stored for grid-scale batteries, but the same option is not so attractive for wind power. The reason is batteries with high energetic cost consumes more fossil fuel and therefore releases more carbon dioxide over a period of lifetime. The amount of energy required to build solar farm is equivalent to building each of the five battery technology. Storing surplus wind energy negatively impacts return on energy investment up to 20% for lithium-ion batteries and up to 50% for lead-acid batteries. Higher battery life would improve energetic performance and will make energy storage options attractive. With this as a background for storage option, let's analyze the levelized cost of energy for heat option versus energy storage options. In our next slide, we will review levelized cost of energy for heat options versus energy storage options. The graphs are plotted between levelized cost of electricity and the operating hours. One of the learning source for this graph is the research done by DNV. The levelized cost of electricity accounts for the lifetime cost of the system, which includes operation, maintenance, construction, taxes, insurance, and other financial obligations of the project. The various graphs represent levelized cost of options like curtailment, waste heat, and storage. As shown in the graph, zero electricity price is assumed for the curtailment option. The reference price is as represented by yellow dotted line. The reference price is based on average price for 3000 hours. Waste heat option is as shown in blue line. At 2500 hours, which corresponds to minimum value, waste heat option becomes viable when electricity price drops below zero for enough duration of hours. Storage options are as shown in gray color line and becomes viable at 850 hours, which means they can supply the electricity below reference price. Similarly, pump hydro becomes profitable after 4500 hours but doesn't surpass battery option as the levelized cost remains higher. But comparing pump hydro and storage option isn't fair as it is not exactly apple to apple comparison considering overall capacity. The next option is converting surplus power to heat. A diagrammatic representation of surplus power to heat is as shown in this slide. The diagram represents some of the possibilities to convert surplus power to heat. Fires consist of fire brick storage medium with a relatively high heat capacity, density, and maximum operating temperature up to 1800 degrees Celsius. The fire brick is charged by resistance heating when electricity demand is low. The industrial demand for heat is more than electricity, so there's definite potential to absorb all low price electricity generated by renewable sources. The figure on the left indicates use of low cost electricity to produce hot air which can be used for the industrial application, for example, furnace or the process industry. The right side indicates adiabatic compressed air storage. The high temperature gas produced due to compressed hot air is by utilizing low price electricity generated, which can be used to improve the performance of turbine and deliver the power when demand exists. Having seen this application for converting surplus power to heat, let's try to understand how feasible these options are in our next slide. This slide shows levelized cost calculations for heat production. Reference price is based on heat or steam produced by natural gas boiler including carbon cost prices in year 2015. Heat options like electrode boiler becomes viable after 170 operating hours. The last heat option is the domestic boiler which becomes viable after 470 operating hours. Heat pump is the best option as it surpasses after 3500 operating hours. This slide is about converting the surplus power to gas, and then gas can be used for various industrial application. The electrical energy required for water splitting is derived from surplus low cost electricity generated when the demand doesn't exist. To meet the high demand of hydrogen and to minimize the impact of on account of greenhouse gases. Biogas is used to produce hydrogen after a process of methanation. In distributed control system, electrolyzer is set on only when the power demand is low. Under such scenario, if the solar or wind farm is producing power, it will automatically trigger to switch on the electrolyzer. The hydrogen produced is then delivered to gas grid, and the gas can be used for the industrial, residential, transport or power generation sector. This section compares different options to produce hydrogen from electricity. The graphs are plotted for levelized cost of hydrogen production from surplus electricity. The cost levels are based on carbon tax conventional fuel alternative. Hydrogen feedstock becomes viable option after 2100 hours and hydrogen production after 4800 operating hours. Hydrogen production with electrolysis can be a viable option if production has more than 2100 operating hours. It shows electrolysis from an investment perspective is not an option if only few hours with surplus electricity is available. The conclusion on summary of options is as shown in this slide. Till 170 operating hours, curtailment becomes viable option. After 170 hours, it makes sense to convert the surplus power to heat. After 850 hours, the best option is to store energy, and after 2100 hours, hydrogen becomes feasible option. The merit order is based on levelized cost analysis and shows the order to invest in surplus option, not the order in which they will be dispatched once built. So hydrogen is not the first investment option. However, considering cyclic nature of variable energy sources and the demand which may not occur as per power production, the best option appears to be hydrogen storage. This graph is about operating hours versus levelized cost for different electrolyzer capacities expressed as a percentage of total power generated. Measure the capacity of electrolyzer, it may even need more than surplus power produced. If the demand is high, dispatchable generation will start contributing and will raise the electricity prices above zero. This means higher production cost. If we add electrolyzer capacity to 5% of the total electricity generating capacity, hydrogen cost will remain above reference price for use as a heating fuel. For 20% electrolyzer capacity, hydrogen remains more expensive than feedstock reference. So overall conclusion is if the required electricity volume for an electrolysis is significant as compared to the total market volume, electricity price will increase, which means electrolysis will become a setter. This ultimately will pose negative impact on hydrogen production cost. As the production cost reduces, it will become integral driver for the economic growth as the hydrogen will fuel various sectors. So the countries in future will see hydrogen being essential part of life. The future economy will be driven by power to power application, which means renewable electricity will be transformed to hydrogen and then back to power via fuel cell or gas turbines. Transfer power to gas through electrolysis, which will have wider application. Power is transformed to fuel and then used for the transport sector. Electricity is again transformed into hydrogen and then used as a feedstock, which can be used for the refining industry. In future, Hydrogen and electricity produced through renewable energy sources has close association. This close working is needed to avoid energy wastage, improve system efficiency, and for sustainable economic growth without impacting planet Earth. The intermittent power sources like solar and wind, and also continuous renewable sources like hydroelectric, geothermal, biomass, power ups electrolyzer to produce hydrogen, which is further treated to produce fuel, power, or ammonia, as shown in this figure. Intermittent renewable like solar and wind is raising concern for storage and grid balancing options. This diagram represents synthetic fuel production with renewable power capacities based on gas and liquid reconversion. This may help to replace fossil fuel with low emission synthetic fuel such as hydrogen, ammonia, or methanol. Methane and methanol finds their usage in applications like mobility heat, long-term storage for re-electrification purpose, or simply as an energy carrier for hydrogen. Hydrogen produce can be used directly for mobility application, example fuel cell and power plant, and for chemical feedstock. Ammonia can be used for a fertilizer, chemical feedstock, or energy carrier for hydrogen, and also for direct use of energy. The main drawback as of today is low renewable penetration with high capital cost and limited output of current electrolyzer. This figure illustrates today's energy system and a potential low carbon energy system in future. Today's energy system is heavily dependent on fossil fuel, and apart from cogeneration there exists little dependency or interlink between various sectors. In future system, hydrogen connects different layer of infrastructure on low carbon system. Use of hydrogen as a energy carrier depends on the deployment of fuel cell and electrolyzer. As seen earlier, renewable energy source will help to bring down the cost of energy, and usage of hydrogen will drive the economic growth. Let's see how transitioning from fossil energy to hydrogen likely to impact Japan's economic growth. The learning for the case study is based on the documents published by Institute of Energy Economics Japan. The information is incorporated to understand the impact of hydrogen introduction on various parameters which drives the economy growth. The various scenarios to understand economic impact are as listed below. Case 0% means no constraint on CO2 emission. Case 65% means 65% CO2 reduction by year 2050 based on 1990 reference of CO2. Case 70% means 70% CO2 reduction by year 2050 based on 1990 reference. Case 65% with hydrogen means 65% CO2 reduction by year 2050 and considering 1990 reference with hydrogen introduction. Case 70% with hydrogen means 70% CO2 reduction by year 2050 with hydrogen introduction. This figure reveals real Japan's GDP evaluated based on year 2000 prices. Real GDP increases to Japanese yen 673 trillion and Japanese yen 665 trillion with 65% and 70% CO2 reduction, but with the introduction of hydrogen. The increase is 0.6% for case 65% and up to 4.2% for case 70% with hydrogen. This figure shows real GDP variation for the year 2050 from case 0 for case 65% and case 70% decomposed with respect to various sectors. Comparatively, the case with hydrogen mitigates the amount of decline of all the components, which makes negative contribution to GDP variation. Decline in private consumption is as shown in green color, had significant impact on GDP. When you compare private consumption decline for case 65% and case 70% with and without hydrogen, you will notice that due to introduction of hydrogen, carbon prices will reduce, which will allow higher disposable income to expand economic activity. This figure shows energy-related investment with 2000-year prices and various scenarios are extrapolated for year 2050. $42.9 trillion is likely to be invested for case 65% with hydrogen as against $42.6 trillion for case 65%, which means 0.8% increase. In contrast, $41.6 trillion investment with case 70% with hydrogen, and this is actually a drop by 0.3% as against $41.7 trillion for case 70% without hydrogen. This figure shows contribution to change in energy related investment. There could be significant increase in investment in building sector by $316 billion by for case 65%. That's mainly due to increase in demand for power and lighting in the residential sector due to increase in disposable income because of lower carbon prices. Investment in private sector increases due to increase in demand in investment. In contrast, for case 70%, there is a significant negative contribution to the investment in the transport sector. CO2 reduction in cases without hydrogen is difficult to achieve for the power generation sector as hydrogen won't be available. Investment in electric vehicle and automobile sector powered by city gas will be popular in order to achieve constraint as per case 70. Investment in the transport sector may not advance for cases with hydrogen to reduce CO2 as it will be easier to achieve the target in power generation sector through hydrogen fired power generation. This slide summarizes what was seen in the earlier slide. The graph represents changes in energy-related investment due to presence or absence of hydrogen introduction. The significant impact on building and transport sector is re-emphasized in this slide. This slide summarizes import spending for fossil fuel and hydrogen in year 2050. If hydrogen imports are allowed, it is likely to increase overall imports by 5% to Japanese yen 9.4 trillion for case 65% constraint with hydrogen, and the import increases by 26% to Japanese yen 10.6 trillion for case 70% as against when hydrogen introduction not allowed. This is mainly because energy consumption increases due to expansion in economic activity due to lower carbon tax. By the way, increased import may not mean additional outflow of national wealth. Even if 50% share of payment for hydrogen import is returned to Japan through various other channels, its import spending is likely to remain at the same level at Japanese yen zero point 0.2 trillion, same as case 0 constraint. This slide is about impact on carbon and electricity prices. This figure shows carbon prices and electricity prices in year 2050 for case 65% and 70% with and without hydrogen. The estimated carbon price as shown in blue diamond is USD 340 per ton of carbon for case 65% constraint with hydrogen and USD 539 per ton of carbon for case 70% constraint with hydrogen. The rate reduction could be 20% and 53% if hydrogen introduction not allowed. This decline in carbon prices is reflected in fossil fuel and electricity prices, which will increase disposable income and expansion of economic activity. Electricity prices in year 2050 for case 65% with hydrogen is Japanese yen 14 per kWh, which is rise of 0.5 per kWh compared to the case without hydrogen. The rise in average electricity price, despite cheaper prices for cases with hydrogen, is due to unit cost of gas-fired power plant is more expensive as compared to the renewable generation. For the case 70% with hydrogen, the electricity price is 15.8 per kWh, which is drop of 4.4 from Japanese yen 20.2 per kWh for case with hydrogen. This is reflection of the fall in carbon prices. This graph is the energy cost and the average prices at final consumption for the year 2050. The energy cost for the case 65% with hydrogen is Japanese yen 44.8 trillion, a drop by 2.9% compared to the case without hydrogen. Similarly, for case 70%, the energy cost is Japanese yen 45.4 trillion, 13% reduction from the case without hydrogen. There is a significant reduction in energy cost for the industrial and the transport sector, which rely heavily on fossil fuel price for which carbon emission has direct impact. For case 65%, average price is Japanese yen 27.9 per million calories with hydrogen, a drop by 4.7%. Similarly, for case 70%, average price is Japanese yen 28.7 per million calorie with hydrogen, a drop by 21%. This slide summarizes economic impact on primary energy supply and the final energy consumption. This figure indicates primary energy supply impact for both the cases with and without hydrogen. Primary energy supply remains at 275 million ton for case 65% and 255 million ton for case 70%, both considering hydrogen introduction, which is 1.6% increase and 12.8% increase compared to the cases without hydrogen. Primary energy supply increases because of expanding economic activity due to decline in carbon prices. Supply of coal and oil increases but supply of natural gas decreases. 5 million ton of hydrogen is introduced for case 65% and 23 million ton is introduced for case 70%. This graph shows final energy consumption. Final energy consumption increases by 1.8% and 12% for case 65% and case 70% as compared to the cases without hydrogen. Consumption of oil and coal increases in the same way as the primary energy source. This slide summarizes impact on power generation mix and CO2 emission. This graph provides power generation mix for the year 2050 for both the constraint cases. Demand for electricity increases as a result of decline in carbon prices. For both case 65 and case 70 with hydrogen, electricity generation is 820 terawatt hour, which is 1.4% and 10% increase as compared to the case without hydrogen. For case with hydrogen, natural gas power generation decreases for constrained cases as hydrogen power generation is introduced. Hydrogen power generation is likely to be 35 terawatt hour for case 65 and 163 terawatt hour for case 70, which is 4% and 19% of total power generation. This graph indicates energy-related CO2 emission in 2050 where CO2 constraints are set. CO2 emission reduces due to use of hydrogen-fired power generation. In case 70%, there is a significant decrease of CO2 reduction in power generation sector, whereas those from the industry sector, CO2 increases by 34% compared to the case without hydrogen. As shown earlier, economic growth is mitigated by the use of hydrogen. However, CO2 emission increases due to expanding production activity in the industry. The summary of hydrogen impact on various indicators of the economy are as listed in this slide. Case 0 figures are mentioned for reference purpose. Although this scenario provides best GDP growth, we are still ignoring this scenario as the planet's sustainability depends on reducing greenhouse emission. Even if we do not focus on best case scenario from GDP point of view, let's compare the parameter for case 65% and case 70% with and without hydrogen. Impact of hydrogen uh, will raise GDP by around 0.6% for 65% case and 4.2% for case 70%. Fossil fuel and hydrogen import increases by 5.3% and 16%. Carbon price will fall up to 114% for case 70%. Average energy price fall by 5% and 26.1%. Primary energy mix increases by 1.6% and 11.4%. Power generation reduces by 10% for case 65% and increases by 9.3% for case 70%. Hydrogen induced is 5 million ton and 23 million ton for case 65% and case 70%. So overall, hydrogen transition will accelerate the economic activity, maintain GDP, and most importantly, it will maintain global warming within guidelines as per Paris Agreement. Now, with the shift of energy carrier to hydrogen, there's a need for new business model to support this transition. That's the current power generation, transmission, and the distribution structure. Power is generated centrally and distributed to load, which could be residential, commercial, or industrial. Non-fossil mix of energy is below 20% as of today, and mostly renewable sector contributes to the same grid. Some of the countries do encourage solar power generation for residential and commercial building and provide subsidy in the form of feed-in tariff. Virtual power plants are installed for industrial and commercial sector like healthcare, data center, which feeds power to the load in case grid fails or to reduce the burden on grid during peak demand. The future power system will differ significantly due to introduction of hydrogen. Market will have two energy carriers, electricity and hydrogen. There will be close working between variable renewable energy power plants and hydrogen manufacturers. The excess power will be simply converted to hydrogen, stored and utilized during peak demand. The hydrogen will also produce through other sources like SMR, coal gasification, biomass, and the hydrogen will be fed to the gas grid. The hydrogen production is likely to be close to the consumption point to reduce transportation cost. Hydrogen and natural gas will be supplied through same natural gas pipeline for residential, commercial and industrial sector. The gas and electricity grid will provide redundancy for each other. Investment in bigger fossil-based power plant will be reduced as the renewable contribution is set to increase. Excess renewable contribution will be used to produce hydrogen. This slide elaborates structural and operational changes which will drive the need for new business model. Supergrid concept will take shape to improve power reliability as the contribution from renewable sources increases. Grid will be multidirectional and protection will also need to be multidirectional, and mostly supergrid will be direct current transmission. This will bring significant structural changes in power generation and transmission and distribution network. Power plant manufacturer and hydrogen manufacturer will work in close coordination so that electrolyzers are automatically turned on when power demand vanishes. Consumer will get transformed into prosumer, generating and consuming electricity at the same time due to additional localized solar power production at home and commercial property. Role of aggregator will emerge and will enable prosumer to get direct benefit of wholesale prices. Village and remote island will be powered by microgrid, essentially delinked from main grid, and the pricing will be determined based on local resources, example gas availability and renewable source contribution. Industries will be located near coastal location and are likely to use hydrogen-based fuel cell technology for power generation. Market will transition from selling kilowatt hours to energy as service. Service provider will provide comfortable room temperature solar PV on roof, battery investment, EV charging station, along with the supply of hydrogen or electricity, or simply signing agreement for the industrial sector based on the availability guarantees of power. Next 10 years are likely to be critical for commercializing hydrogen. In this section, we have summarized likely initiatives in the coming years. There will be conscious efforts to boost investors' confidence. Most of the growth will be due to government project, and with the right government policy, hydrogen project will attract private investors. Sustainable growth can be targeted with the hydrogen usage in several sectors. This can be possible by use of hydrogen in various sectors like transport sector, power generation sector, and developing products suitable for hydrogen gas or dual fuel product relying on hydrogen and electricity. Solid investment in supply chain as stable supply chain will ensure sustainable growth. 5% blending of hydrogen will drive the demand for hydrogen products, which will further spur the investment for supply chain. Many refueling stations will be built worldwide to promote hydrogen-based products like fuel cell transport system. Shipping routes will be introduced for hydrogen similar to LNG, which will set up international supply chain network. Australia and Japan already agreed on collaboration in which blue hydrogen will be supplied by Australia to Japan. Likely investment in R&D and resource sharing will bring hydrogen-dependent technology at lower price. Some of the countries like Singapore and Israel are jointly investing in R&D for fuel cell products. The R&D investment by Japan and South Korea is towards introducing hydrogen-based products for various sectors. Europe launched several programs to promote hydrogen-based trucks, buses, and refueling stations. OEM model will be introduced for hydrogen technology products to expedite commercialization. Involving OEM will further add resources and will help to bring down the price. Harmonizing international standard will be on priority. Safe handling of hydrogen will drive the demand for hydrogen suitable product for residential and industrial sector. There will be focused government policies like providing feed-in tariff for hydrogen-based products. Favorable policies towards carbon capture and storage will create interest for oil exploration company towards hydrogen production. Policies to ensure most industries located near coastal area to get the benefit of producing cheap green hydrogen. New business model will give rise to prosumer or aggregator model. Transport energy is likely to be green hydrogen based and will be delinked from electricity grid. More prosumer and energy integrators will convert electricity market to retail business with low energy prices. The last section on this topic is one-page summary. This slide summarizes whatever we have seen so far. Market drivers are first climate change policy, second availability of low-cost electricity due to renewable power source, and third is reducing price for hydrogen-based technology products. Indicators. Various countries are strategizing their action plan towards climate change policy. Industries forming alliance for jointly producing hydrogen-based products. Currently, hydrogen is produced through SMR, coal gasification, fossil fuel, and green hydrogen through electrolysis integrated with variable renewable sources. Hydrogen provides environment-friendly fuel. Hydrogen has energy density as one-third of natural gas. Its energy per unit mass is 3 times of gasoline, and its ignition energy is one-tenth of methane. Many countries are introducing policies to stimulate growth in hydrogen sector. These policies are towards tax incentives and subsidy for hydrogen-based products, removing barriers through standardizing international norms for hydrogen production and consumption, and investing in supply chain. Biggest impact will come by investing in technology to reduce production cost, getting into transport sector and building refueling network for hydrogen, catering current heat requirement with hydrogen based products. The demand would exist for various applications in building and industrial sector, hydrogen based sector, transport sector, and transitioning from fossil-based to emission-free power generation. All these initiatives will drive the demand for hydrogen-based technology. As per Hydrogen Council, by 2030, global consumption for hydrogen will be less than 100 million metric tons. By 2040, it will be 200 million metric ton, and by 2050, it will be slightly below 550 million metric tons, which is 7 times more than today's consumption. If you have any questions in relation to this content, please contact us at info@mr-pcs.com, Also refer fuel cell market insight presentation on our website, which is towards understanding the hydrogen market technologies and how it is finding its way towards commercialization. Visit www.mr-pcs.com for more details. Thanks on behalf of MRPCS Pte Limited. Please take out your time to read the copyright statement and disclaimer in relation to this report. Once again, thanks for your support.